Hello, and welcome back to the next tour with
Ian.
and Andia. We are so happy to have our guest here today. We are on episode 18. So this is transition through loss. I'm just going to warn you, this is my disclaimer at the beginning. This might be a little heavy, but I think it's an important topic to talk about, and it's sort of the inevitable. We talked about it a little bit with Jerry Quinn back when we talked about life insurance. We talked a little bit about it with Heather Walrath when we talked about survivor benefit plan, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper today with our guest, Daniel Kopp. And Daniel, we're super glad to have you here today. So thanks for joining us.
So glad I could be here. I love what you guys are doing here and love the information that other guests have shared. So hopefully I can continue to pay that forward as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Daniel is a veteran. So he served just shy of 9 years in the Air Force as an air battle manager. And I only know what that is because Ian was a cop and he told me all about it. But he separated as a captain in February of 2018. Since then, he's become a financial planner for the military and Gold Star widows. And I would say you did put that down as your job description, but I feel like you could put probably 17 things underneath that too. Like you are a podcaster also. You also do, training sessions for folks.
Yes.
I think it's very impressive what you do. So I know you kind of put it succinctly, but it is pretty amazing, all the stuff that you do. So thanks for being here to talk to us about this topic today.
It's an important one. Yes, very passionate about it.
As you should be. Yeah. So again, Daniel, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And why don't we just go ahead and dive right in and I guess go head first right into, as Andia said, kind of the heavy part of it. So knowing the title of this episode, transition through loss, and really to kind of get started on the conversation today, would you mind sharing your story about your time in the military, your transition period, and really what brought you to what you do professionally today?
Yeah, there's so many things there when we think about how I got to this place. But I always loved military history growing up as a kid. So it was a fairly natural transition as I started thinking about what did I want to do when I grow up, and stumbled my way into understanding about what the academies were and ROTC. Ultimately got an ROTC scholarship, went to Purdue University, majored in economics there. So I was always interested in money as well, but I didn't realize there were a lot of career paths, or at least ones that aligned with where I thought my ethics and morals would want it to be. I've told a story on other podcasts about how some people I knew got swindled and by so-called financial advisors. So I had a pretty poor taste in my mouth. But I always loved the military. So free college, yep, sign me up, go that way. Commissioned, went off to go be an air battle manager and really just fell in love with the military culture, the environment, the team, the people, everyone that I got to work with, and excelled. So made a lot of progress in my early assignments, and ultimately ended up getting married as well. And Sarah joined me on my Air Force journey. And that's when things kind of started taking some different tacks as we approached next PCS cycle and things like that. Her health had some pretty serious challenges from even before we joined in marriage. And ultimately that started to slow down my Air Force track. I had to step back from assignments, not go on certain things. And with our last assignment then being up in Idaho in Mountain Home, her health pretty seriously declined, and I was pretty much her full-time caregiver. So I thought for sure I was going to be a lifer. And then life had other plans in this particular case. So I was her full-time caregiver, and ultimately we lived the last summer together in hospitals in between Idaho and Utah before she came home to hospice and then passed away in August of 2017. So at that point in time, though, I'm so thankful looking back for my Air Force family, how they took care of me and the way the command and leadership gave me the flexibility I needed to do. I couldn't have gone through that journey without the support rallying around me of my Air Force family. As a result of that, though, I'd already submitted my separation papers because I needed to do something where I could have the ability to work from home, stay flexible, and be able to care for her. Obviously, that became a different story at that point in time, but my path had already been set at that point in time, transitioning into what is now financial planning.
Wow, that's deep. That is very impactful. But I really appreciate you, one, sharing, the pain and, the story of how you got to where you are today and how life just changes, and but you're making the most of something that was very, very personal and very, just very devastating, and it can really consume a lot of folks. And your vulnerability here is definitely appreciated, and but at the same time too, I would offer that through that vulnerability, I think that what you talk about is very inspirational as well. So thanks for sharing a little bit about how you've surmounted those major obstacles and in your journey through life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just, I guess, following up with that a little bit. So after Sarah's passing, then you'd already transitioned at that point. So how did you start down and follow that career path then, and decide, I guess, at that point to be, a niche, financial planner in that space?
So it was actually because I hired my own financial planner about that same time of getting out of the military. I had been very interested. I was aware of the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner designation, and I'd found about this thing called fee-only financial planning, where not taking commissions and a little bit different business model, right? Just people paying for advice. And I was like, aha, that's it. That's the kind of business model that I want to do, because I didn't have any awareness before I stumbled across that. So I hired my own financial planner, and that was extremely helpful in realizing the value of it that goes beyond dollars and cents. I always tell clients, right, this is about hopes and fears and dreams. And so working with a professional, and he was the one who suggested, like, okay, well, you have military expertise. Makes sense that you could serve the military community, but you've also gone through something that's intensely personal, deeply moving, this grief journey that in some ways I'm still on, right? There's never an end to grief. What if you took some of that and used it to help people who had gone through the same thing? So until someone else had suggested to me, I had never even considered that. Ultimately, went through the Certified Financial Planner coursework, launched my own RIA, Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, in late 2018. During that time frame, I also took a sabbatical. So I took about 8 months off. I bought an RV, went across 37 states after I got out, and just visited friends and family, and just really journaled and read and slept and grieved and tried to figure out what's next. In a perfect plan that only God could have brought about, I met my now wife, Anna, as a part of that, introduced by some family members. And so we got engaged, and then later on got married, and I moved to Boston and launched everything there. So a whirlwind of that kind of first year and a half afterwards.
No
Wow.
kidding. That's incredible. Really incredible. Yeah.
Honestly, you couldn't write this stuff, right? This is how life happens. You don't expect all of these things to come at you, but I think it's clear, like, you were open to all of that happening and really kept, and listen to others. Like, that's so important when you said that about, speaking to the financial advisor that was helping you go through and, dig through all of those things. Like, how awesome is that became sort of then how you were able to give back through such a tragic situation. So obviously, with your personal and professional experience, you do have this unique perspective. What are there things that you would go back and sort of tell yourself financially before the loss of your spouse to, like, I don't know, get your house in order, like, to be better prepared for that? I mean, I guess with her illness, you sort of knew that was coming, but, and even when you've worked with other folks, like, thinking about that, the left side of, of loss, what are there things that you would do to sort of prepare financially for that?
Looking back, we had most things done that we could, but because we did know, especially towards the end with hospice, we were able to correctly update titling, make sure we haven't forgotten about passwords or logins. So some of the most common challenges that I see on this side of the professional side working with clients is you incorrect account titling, beneficiaries designations old, so mom or ex-spouse or something like that, and then not having estate planning documents done. So not having a will, if a trust is appropriate, not having that set up, or accounts titled to pour over into that as a needed. And then online login access. That is probably the most painful, most difficult. So sharing, like, your phone password. I recommend everybody use a password manager. So whether that's LastPass or 1Password or something like that, so that you can have access to share login information back and forth. Because the digital side of estate planning is just becoming more and more entrenched into our daily lives. So that wasn't as common back in 2017 when all this happened, but that is more and more and more of a challenge today.
Yeah, no kidding. And I just, think about all the digital stuff that we do just day to day, trying to manage logins for all the streaming services, for example. And, we're logged out of one. Oh my goodness. What email address and what password are we
Yeah.
using? I mean, but I mean, in all seriousness though, I mean, you hit on something that is really, really key, and for folks that often live separate lives within a marriage, for example, I think we all know people that they have their separate accounts, they have their separate, records, they have separate everything. That's a really, really key point in order to, I think, alleviate some of that added pain within grief. That's something that folks should really, I think, have an open, honest conversation with their partner, on being able to make sure that they're ready for a potential eventuality. So that's huge advice right there. And I appreciate that, Daniel. So another kind of quick follow-up question to that, so you talked a little bit about, what to do kind of on the left side, of all of that. So for those who have already experienced a loss, maybe similar to yours, for example, are there any bits of advice you'd like to share with folks like that on what they can do after to kind of help work through some of those things? And, and I'll just kind of throw this out there. So when my younger brother passed, long time ago, he was 21. My mom was the beneficiary on his life insurance policy. And, it was one of those things with the grief. She didn't want the money. She, it was not something that could replace him, obviously, but she didn't know what to do with it. And it became actually a burden in trying to figure out, because it was a constant reminder. It was something that she just really felt she needed to, I think, subconsciously liquidate in any means possible. So being able to, I think, package that up into something that's useful, something that can work through the grief cycles. What kind of advice might you give, folks in that situation?
Wow, there's so much there. I'm so sad to hear about your family's loss, especially at such an age as that. There's a lot of layers there when it comes to estate planning. It's where we combine everyone's favorite taboo topics: death and money.
Funny.
Let's mingle them together. So estate planning can feel scary. It can feel intimidating. It can feel overwhelming, whether you're preparing for it ahead of time or dealing with it afterwards. So just put that out there for the listeners. Like, if you feel overwhelmed thinking about it on either side, you're not alone. It's very, very common.
Mhm.
Academic research that Andy and I both went through, like our financial therapy program at Kansas State University, shows us that there are many conflicting emotions around receipt of benefits. And while most of the time it's always intended as a gift of love from those who have died, that's not always felt that same way, right? Some academic research even showed this after 9/11, where they called the life insurance money blood money. And the payouts there, they didn't want it. I've also seen it in one of the research papers that I did with my colleagues there at Kansas State, was this idea of financial anxiety commingling with the grief, having difficulty separating out what is one versus the other. And I've even seen it now with clients. Similarly, some of my Gold Star widows, even, like, I don't want this money. I want my spouse back. And so I will subconsciously give more away to family members or friends to try to assuage this inner guilt feeling. So all those are typical reactions, right? That's not uncommon. So just stepping back and thinking, and this is where bringing in a team of professionals to help can be incredibly powerful. We talked about my personal experience with a financial planner and the work that I do with clients, but that's only one side of it. I also had tremendous experience working with a grief counselor, mental health practitioners, obviously, and still in the military, chaplains. Outside of that, you've got your religious and faith leaders who can help, bringing in a community of people who can rally around you, especially when you're the one going through this. There's enormous amount of what we call brain fog. So
Mhm.
it's just the
Yes.
overwhelming feeling of everything becomes difficult. I could not read books for about a year and a half, even though I love to read. Like, even simple cognitive tasks took enormous amount of time. Like, my need for sleep went up. So these are all common reactions after grief, which can slow things down. So the last piece of this then is what I have people break tasks down into what we call the now, the soon, and the later buckets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something has to get done now, right? Some things with the probate process, filing appropriate paperwork, and working on some of that. Some of the stuff can be done soon, next month, triaging and things like that. And then some stuff can wait, right? And don't try to do the stuff in the later bucket now because you already have an overwhelming amount now.
Yeah.
That's such a great point. We've talked a lot about so I'm going to sort of throw something at you here. Be prepared. So we've talked a lot about, and I think the context here is, the loss of your spouse when you were still on active duty. But I want to flip the script a little bit and think about the spouse who's left behind when they've lost their either active duty or their veteran, and sort of the implications for that. And I think maybe not as tied into that support network, and sort of feeling that they're left, not only without this tie now to the military community, but also now without their spouse. So can you talk a little bit about what maybe that looks like, or advice that you might have in that situation?
Yeah, there's a big difference in what happens following an active duty death versus a veteran death. Because in active duty, the entire support network activates. You're assigned a casualty affairs officer. You're automatically given certain benefits, right? Things just start working. That the system is there to support. Whereas on the veteran side, right, there's no CAO assigned. Veterans benefits have to be applied for. They're not always automatically assigned. And so the administrative task load is much, much higher with sometimes less built-in support network. So that's a key distinction there. Also think about like most couples, academic research shows, and my experience working with clients is there's a financial kind of one who takes the lead. So the financial spouse or something like that, and someone who is not, right? And while the gender roles are often reversed from a classic heterosexual couple in the United States, more often outside of the military, men run the household finances at the big picture, investments, cash flow, things like that. Military families, that's not always the case, right? Especially with deployments and things like that. So which roles do you fill in your marriage and in your relationship? And if something happened to one of you, how would that impact the other, right? So I manage the finances in my family because I enjoy it. I'm much better at it. But I got to make sure that my wife, Anna, comes along for the ride, right? So she knows not just where everything is, but how it all works together. I will say that is one of the main reasons why some of my active duty or veteran couples come and hire me. The quote unquote financial spouse says, I want you here involved in this relationship just in case something happens to me, so that there's not a loss of understanding or a gap in coverage or the plan falls apart, right? So we're coming together. So there's a lot of things to think about that. Like, how robust is your own internal financial plan? How important is your specific roles and responsibilities? And how does your spouse engage in that, if at all?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Andia already,
I was going to say, I can probably guess here.
Finances. Yeah. When I look at her spreadsheets and hear her talk about it, it's like listening to quantum physics. So no, not really. But you bring up a really, really excellent point. And I do my best to try to, get along for the ride as much as I can too. So that's really, really important, especially when you tie it to the things like the logins and the passwords and everything else you've already talked about as well. And these are all super excellent points, and, makes me want to go out and, relook how we've got everything. And it's great motivation to be able to, hear you talk about being able to kind of come through all of this and be able to give back to those around you in this military and veteran community. And hats off to you. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I think, I've heard it called many different things, money dates or money appointments, whatever you want to call it with your significant other. But if you're commingling your finances, like you should be sitting down and having these conversations with each other, and you should be,
or even if you're not,
right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, who's going to be left with your financial life when you're gone, and it's just important that we talk about these things because, you've experienced loss multiple times. I've experienced loss in my family as well. So, knowing and understanding how all of those things work is just so important when you're not in a tragedy situation, right? When you're not, you can be a little less emotionally involved and have those conversations.
Well, it's the whole idea, right? The sweat ahead of time, the training, the preparation in the military saves us those hard-fought, blood-earned lessons in combat. The similar thing applies here, right? The more, the better the plan can be ahead of time. The less heartache, the less mess there is to clean up afterwards. And I know it can feel scary or overwhelming. There's resources out there that I often recommend. Obviously, the JAG is a great place to start because it's free for military and veterans, things like that. Availability dependent for veteran families and access to base. But there's also quite a few online resources that now help both with conversations. I use resources from the Institute for Health Improvement called the Conversation Project. There's a very straightforward living will called the 5 Wishes document that you can look up online. And there's also even online tools that help make getting an estate plan done much easier. Trust and Will is probably the easiest, most accessible one. And there's even like affiliation discounts based on certain military banks and things like that, where you can input your data, get it documentation done at a much more affordable price point than you might, and just easier to do it. So regardless of where you're at in the stage, I just encourage you to take a look at some of these. Take one small step today to make your estate plan just a little bit better.
Oh, for sure.
Great advice. Well, and I appreciate all those links, and we will put all of those in the show notes, those resources that you shared. But we do want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't covered? I mean, I know there's more, but is there anything you'd like to leave our guests with today?
Probably the biggest one when you're thinking about the military transition and this topic is some of those benefits that are automatic on active duty become a decision point at military retirement. Really, the biggest financial decision that every military retiree will make, almost probably for their entire life, is whether to opt into the Survivor Benefit Plan, SPP. I won't belabor that. I know Heather talked quite a bit about that on the last one. But again, getting a really good plan for that is important because, again, benefits that are automatic on active duty are no longer so. And even if you opt into full SPP for the spouse, that does not mean that that is in and of itself sufficient. SGLI is going to go away. VGLI is a lot more expensive. That's typically only appropriate for people who cannot otherwise get life insurance on the outside, i.e. you're uninsurable, or what a life insurance company might call table rated. So a much more expensive kind of policy as a result of that. So applying for some level of term life insurance that would be appropriate to protect your spouse and potentially your children is really, really important. I did a huge long episode talking about military transition on the Choose FI podcast a while back. We talked about like timelines associated with that. If people are interested in more how to the actual tactics of planning and appropriate separation, but SPP decision and term life insurance are very important considerations along with the estate planning piece here.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, all of that, and you've hit on a lot of different topics we've touched on before in previous episodes, and having it all kind of come together, through your lens and all of that, I think is just really good to state again. And I really appreciate you bringing all that to light, Daniel. So this has been a really, really great episode. As heavy as it is, talking about loss of a loved one and trying to figure yourself out along with still going on, that's an important topic, and really appreciate you kind of helping us unpack all of this.
Yeah, I would say I'm grateful to take what I've learned personally and share it in a way that can impact others.
Absolutely. So with that, again, we'll wrap up this part of the episode and get into, I guess, we won't say the fun stuff, but maybe the little more lighthearted kind of aspects of the next tour. In this first segment, we like to call "What's in Your Rucksack?" So, or your helmet bag or flight bag, whatever you want to call it. Go ABM. Love it. But so we'd like to ask you kind of 2 parts of that. As you came, off of active duty and into your civilian profession, literally, figuratively, proverbially, whatever you want. What would be one thing that you did carry forward with you that you really value? And what was something that you just chucked to the wayside that you felt you were glad to shed?
Yeah. So I was involved in aircrew, and a lot of our training revolved around CRM, crew resource management. And so a huge portion of that is the idea that because we had all the way from senior officers to the most junior enlisted working together on the jet, we had this idea that there is no rank on the jet. In other words, anyone who sees something or is contributing to the mission is as equal as everybody else in their contributions and their efforts, right? To speak up, to say something, to get involved. And part of that is also related to like the buddy system, right? Don't leave a man behind. And so that idea of coming together as a team and anybody and everybody can contribute has certainly played well in this next stage of my life, both as I grow the team at Wise Stewardship and the people working alongside me there, but also across this profession, right? I've learned so much talking to new entrants, people who are as passionate about coming into the career space. And you mentioned on my podcast, so I created the Military to Financial Planner podcast to help people break into this profession as well for those who might be interested. And so there's so much that can be learned regardless of where you're at, because we all bring a different perspective. And so that has certainly served me well on this side. The thing that I probably leave behind is the idea I had some leadership that believed that staying in the office, even if there wasn't any work to be done, was important to show face. So the idea of just busy work sitting there, even though there was nothing to be done, especially when we were in very high ops tempo, like whenever I had the opportunity, I'd release my airmen to say, all right, I'll stay behind, you guys go ahead.
Yeah.
But just, again, the idea like work should be intentional. And when we're all done, we should be intentional about what we do outside of work as well. So that's something I've tried to learn, step away from. I had some kind of poor, probably more almost workaholic tendencies from my military time that, especially now that I'm self-employed, there's no other boss except me. So learning to find the balance in life. Yeah, that's probably what I've left behind.
I couldn't agree with both of those more. I try to live both of those as well. Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that. That was great.
Well, I get to transition us to the game portion. So this is, and this one's kind of fun. So we of course, go from episode to episode, and we give our guest a chance to guess from our previous. And usually you don't know who that person is, but this time you actually do. So our previous guest, which was Lacey Langford.
Yes.
So I'm going to read her 2 truths and a lie, and then you get to guess which one is correct.
Right.
Okay. So 1, she almost died while her husband was at jump school. 2, one of her first work trips, she saw Glenn Close in the airport and her dog pooped on the ground. Glenn Close's dog.
Okay.
Glenn Close's dog. Yes.
And 3, she got honor graduate at basic training by 1 point.
Wow. That's a tough one. I'd say it's either the second or third one. I'm going to go with the third one, honor graduate.
You are correct. She actually missed it by 1 point.
Ah. I did not know that. That was just a good guess.
Well done.
That was a good guess.
Well done. We both got it wrong.
I know, we totally did. Awesome. Well, okay, so now it's your turn. So your 2 truths and a lie. So you get to list your 3 bits of information, and then our next guest will get to guess, and we will not reveal until the next episode.
Excellent. All right, so I got 3 of them here. The first one is, as a part of my career, I got to directly support every combatant command and be a part of that. Number 2 was my call sign is 5-0. And lastly, my favorite uniform out of all the ones that I wore was BDUs.
Oh, I think I know which one it is.
I think I know too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're not going to guess now. We'll guess on the next episode. But Daniel, this was excellent. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate the conversation. We appreciate your knowledge and expertise, the things that you've gone through, but that, like we've said multiple times now, that you're sharing that experience with others, I think is so vitally important. So
yeah. And, as Andia said, we'll drop all the links that you mentioned into the show notes. We'll also make sure that folks have a way to get in touch with you through your LinkedIn profile if they want to connect and learn about what you do and maybe seek your services for, fee-only planning and things like that. So, again, thank you so much, Daniel. This has been really great, really heartfelt, and, appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to get out there and turn things into positives for other folks.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I'm very grateful.
Definitely.
Well, folks, this is the end of episode 18. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube. We're also on Facebook, Instagram. Like, subscribe, comment. Check out thenexttourpodcast.com. You can find all of our episodes there. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Audible and Amazon. So,
and LinkedIn.
Oh, did I miss LinkedIn?
That's okay.
We always got a lot of places. But we'll see you guys out there, and we will see you again on the next episode of The Next Tour. The views, opinions, and advice expressed by our guest on the next tour are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast, Andia, or any affiliated organizations. While we strive to provide helpful and accurate information, this podcast is for informational purposes only. We encourage listeners to consult with professionals or conduct their own research before making any significant decisions related to military transition or post-service life. The content is intended as guidance and personal perspective, not as official advice.